The rain hammered down on the muddy streets of Placerville, California, and Priscilla Zimmerman stood shivering outside the saloon with nothing but the torn dress on her back, and the certainty that she deserved every terrible thing that had ever happened to her. It was late March of 1874, and the gold rush town had seen better days, though not by much. The once thriving mining community still clung to life, sustained by stubborn prospectors and the businesses that fed off their dwindling hopes. Priscilla had arrived 3 months earlier with a man who promised her everything and delivered nothing but bruises and abandonment. He had left 2 days ago with the last of her money and the horse she had foolishly put in his name. She pressed her back against the rough wooden exterior of the building, trying to find shelter under the narrow overhang. Her auburn hair hung in wet tangles around her face, and her green eyes stared blankly at the churning mud of Main Street. At 22 years old, she felt ancient, used up, worthless. The saloon door swung open, and warm light spilled out along with the smell of whiskey and tobacco smoke. A tall figure emerged, pulling his hat down against the rain. He nearly walked past her before he stopped, his boots squelching in the mud as he turned back. "Madam." "You all right out here?" Priscilla didn't look up. "Fine. Just fine." The man crouched down to her level, and she caught a glimpse of his face in the lamplight from the saloon window. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. His face was weathered but kind, with the permanent squint of someone who spent his days in the sun. "You don't look fine," he said gently. "You look half frozen and soaked through. When did you last eat?" "Don't need your charity," Priscilla muttered, wrapping her arms tighter around herself. "Don't need your pity either." "Wasn't offering pity, was offering supper. There's a difference." He straightened up and held out his hand. "Name's Vincent Kane. I work the Double R Ranch about 5 miles west of here. And you are—" she ignored his outstretched hand. "Nobody you need to concern yourself with." Vincent studied her for a long moment, then shrugged out of his coat. Before she could protest, he draped it over her shoulders. The warmth of it, still holding his body heat, made her want to cry. "I can't take this," she said, trying to push it back at him. "Sure you can. I got another one at the boarding house." He nodded toward the restaurant across the street. "Come on. Let's get some food in you, and then we can figure out what to do about your situation." "There's nothing to figure out," Priscilla said, but she was already standing, pulled upward by some force she couldn't name. Maybe it was hunger. Maybe it was the genuine concern in his voice. Maybe it was just that she was so tired of being cold and alone. "And my name is Priscilla Zimmerman." The restaurant was small but clean, run by a Chinese family who had stayed on after the railroad work dried up. Vincent led her to a corner table and ordered 2 plates of beef stew and fresh bread without asking what she wanted. When the food came, Priscilla tried to eat slowly, tried to maintain some dignity, but her hunger won out. She devoured the stew like a starving animal. Vincent ate his own meal without comment, occasionally signaling for more bread, which he pushed across the table to her. Only when she finally sat back, her bowl empty and her stomach full for the first time in days, did he speak again. "So, Priscilla Zimmerman, what brings you to Placerville?" She should have lied, should have made up some story about waiting for family or passing through on her way somewhere better. Instead, the truth spilled out of her like blood from a wound. "Came here with a man who said he loved me. He didn't. Left me here without money or a way to get anywhere else. Before that, I was in Sacramento, working in a boarding house until the owner's son decided I was part of his privileges. Before that, Virginia City, where my father drank himself to death and my mother followed him 6 months later, leaving me with nothing but debts I couldn't pay. Before that," she laughed bitterly. Before that doesn't matter. The story's always the same. I'm not the kind of woman good things happen to. Vincent leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. That's so. What kind of woman are you then? The worthless kind. The kind men use and throw away. The kind who isn't worth loving or keeping or anything else. She met his eyes defiantly, daring him to contradict her, to offer some false comfort she could reject. Instead, he just nodded slowly. Well, Priscilla Zimmerman, I think you're wrong about that, but I expect you won't believe me if I just say so. You'd be right about that. Then I suppose I'll have to prove it to you. He stood up and put some coins on the table, more than enough to cover both meals. The boarding house down the street has rooms. Mrs. Chen, who runs this place, her sister owns it. I'll get you set up there for a week, give you time to figure out your next move. Priscilla stood too, suddenly angry. I told you I don't need your charity. What do you want from me? There's always something. Vincent's expression didn't change. Don't want anything. Just seems like you could use a bit of help and I'm in a position to offer it. No strings. No expectations. Just one person helping another because that's what decent folk do. In my experience, there's no such thing as decent folk. Then your experience has been lacking. He headed toward the door, then paused and looked back. You coming? Or would you rather go back to freezing in the rain? Pride warred with practicality. Practicality won. Priscilla followed him out into the night. The boarding house was indeed run by Mrs. Chen's sister, a quiet woman named May, who showed Priscilla to a small but clean room on the second floor. There was a real bed with a quilt, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a window that looked out over the street. It was more than Priscilla had dared hope for. Vincent paid May for a week's stay, then turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. I come into town every Saturday for supplies. That's tomorrow. If you need anything, or if you just want someone to talk to, I'll be around most of the day. Why are you doing this? Priscilla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He considered the question seriously. My mama used to say that we're all just one bad day away from being the person who needs help. Guess I never forgot that. He tipped his hat. Good night, Miss Zimmerman. After he left, Priscilla stood in the middle of the room, still wearing his coat, and tried to remember the last time someone had been kind to her without wanting something in return. She couldn't. That night, she slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks, and she didn't dream at all. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having passed in the night. Priscilla woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the sound of the town coming to life below. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was, and panic seized her. Then memory returned, along with a confusion of emotions she didn't want to examine too closely. She washed her face in the basin, grimacing at her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. Her dress was still damp and dirty, her hair a mess. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman with nothing and no prospects. There was a knock at the door. When she opened it, May stood there with a bundle in her arms. Mr. Kane, he leave these, May said, holding out the bundle. Say you might need. Inside were a simple but clean calico dress in a soft blue, a shawl, stockings, and even a comb. Priscilla stared at the items, her throat tight. He left this morning, she asked. May shook her head. He come back early, bring these, say he get from the general store. She smiled. He good man, Mr. Kane. Everyone say so. After May left, Priscilla changed into the new dress. It fit reasonably well, maybe a little loose, but it was clean and whole and hers. She combed her hair until it fell in waves down her back, then braided it simply. When she looked in the mirror again, she saw someone who looked almost respectable. She found Vincent an hour later, loading supplies into a wagon outside the general store. He saw her approaching and smiled. Blue suits you, he said. Priscilla stopped a few feet away, clutching the shawl around her shoulders. You didn't have to do that. I know. I can't pay you back. Didn't ask you to. But I can't just take charity. I can't be beholden to you. Vincent secured a bag of flour in the wagon bed and turned to face her properly. You're not beholden to me. Consider it a gift freely given. Though if it makes you feel better, you could consider it a loan against future earnings. I don't have any future earnings. I don't have any prospects at all. Sure you do. You can read and write, I assume. Of course I can. Then you're already ahead of half the people in this town. Can you cook? So keep accounts. I can do all those things, but it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to hire a woman with my reputation. What reputation? Far as anyone here knows, you're just someone passing through who had some bad luck. He lifted another crate into the wagon. The foreman's wife at the Double R, her name is Martha Henderson. She's been looking for someone to help with the cooking and laundry. Housing and meals included, plus wages. I could put in a word if you're interested. Priscilla felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Hope, maybe, though she tried to squash it down. Why would you do that? You don't know anything about me. I know you've had a hard time. I know you're trying to survive. I know you were honest with me last night when you could have lied. That's enough. He closed the wagon gate and leaned against it. Look, I'm not saying your life has to stay the way it's been. People can change their circumstances. Sometimes they just need a chance. Nobody's ever given me a chance before. Well, I'm not nobody. He pulled a pocket watch from his vest and checked it. I'm heading back to the ranch this afternoon. If you want, you can ride out with me and meet Martha. See if it's something you'd want to do. If not, that's fine too. The room's paid for the week either way. Priscilla looked at him, this strange cowboy who had appeared in her life like some kind of miracle she didn't believe in. What do you get out of this? The satisfaction of helping someone who needs it. That enough? She wanted to say no. Wanted to reject this kindness because accepting it meant believing she might deserve it, and she had spent so long knowing she didn't. But another part of her, a part she had thought was dead, whispered that maybe, just maybe, he meant what he said. All right, she said. I'll go meet her. Vincent's smile was genuine and warm. Good, we'll leave after lunch. You eaten? They ate at the same restaurant as the night before, and Vincent told her about the Double R Ranch. It was a cattle operation, owned by a man named Robert Reynolds, who had come west from Missouri before the war. Reynolds was fair but firm, Vincent said, and he ran a tight outfit. Most of the hands were decent men, though there were always a few troublemakers in any group. Martha Henderson's husband Sam was the foreman, and they had been with the ranch since the beginning. Martha's good people, Vincent said. Lost her own daughter to fever a few years back. She's been lonely since then, I think. Sam does his best, but he's not much for talking. Having another woman around might do her good. What about you? Priscilla asked. How long have you been at the Double R? 4 years now. Came up from Texas after my father passed. My mother had already been gone for some time, and there wasn't anything holding me there anymore. Worked my way north, taking ranch jobs where I could find them, until I landed here. Turned out I was pretty good with horses, so Mr. Reynolds put me in charge of the remuda. I've been here ever since. You ever think about moving on? Vincent shrugged. Sometimes. But this is good country and it's steady work. A man could do worse than to put down roots here. He met her eyes. A woman too, I expect. The ride out to the ranch took about an hour. Priscilla sat beside Vincent on the wagon seat, watching the countryside roll by. The land was beautiful in a harsh way, all rolling hills covered in grass that was just starting to green up with spring. Cattle dotted the landscape, and in the distance, she could see mountains still capped with snow. Vincent pointed out landmarks as they went, telling her about the creek that ran through the ranch property. The old line shack that had been there since Reynolds first claimed the land. The place where a grizzly had killed one of the hands 2 summers ago. He talked easily, filling the silence with stories, never pressing her to respond beyond what came naturally. Priscilla found herself relaxing despite herself. The sun was warm, the air smelled of grass and earth, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt almost peaceful. The ranch house came into view as they crested a hill. It was a sprawling structure of wood and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Behind it were the bunkhouse, the barn, several corrals, and various outbuildings. Smoke rose from the main house chimney, and Priscilla could see chickens scratching in a yard near what must be the kitchen. "That's the main house," Vincent said. "Mr. Reynolds lives there with his son. Martha and Sam have a cabin just beyond the barn. That's where we're headed." He drove the wagon past the main house and pulled up in front of a neat cabin with a small garden plot in front. Before he could even set the brake, the door opened and a woman emerged. She was perhaps 50, with gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a bun and a face that had seen hard work but still held kindness. "Vincent Kane, you're back earlier than expected," she called out. "Don't tell me you forgot something." "No, madam, brought you a visitor." He hopped down from the wagon and came around to help Priscilla down. "Martha Henderson, this is Priscilla Zimmerman." "Priscilla, Martha." Martha's shrewd eyes took in Priscilla's appearance, missing nothing, but her voice was warm when she spoke. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Zimmerman." "Vincent, you staying for coffee, if it's not too much trouble?" "Never is." She gestured toward the cabin. "Come on in, both of you." The inside of the cabin was cozy and spotlessly clean. Martha poured coffee for all of them and set out a plate of cookies. They sat around the small table, and Vincent explained the situation, omitting the details of how he had found Priscilla, but making it clear she was looking for work. Martha listened without interrupting, occasionally sipping her coffee. When Vincent finished, she turned her attention to Priscilla. "So you can cook and clean. Do laundry?" "Yes, madam. I'm not fancy with my cooking, but I can make good, solid meals. I can bake bread, preserve food, do mending and laundry. I worked in a boarding house for 2 years, so I know how to manage a kitchen and keep things running smooth." "The work here is hard," Martha said. "During roundup and branding, we've got near 20 men to feed 3 times a day plus coffee and snacks. During the quiet times, it's just 8 or so, plus Mr. Reynolds and his son. We do laundry once a week, and there's always mending to be done. We keep a garden in the summer, and there's preserving to be done in the fall. It's dawn to dusk, 6 days a week." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Priscilla said. "No, I don't expect you are." Martha studied her for another moment. "I'll be honest with you. I need the help, and I'm willing to give you a chance. But I won't tolerate any carrying on with the ranch hands. This is a respectable operation, and I expect respectable behavior." Something in Priscilla's chest tightened. Of course. Even this came with judgment, with the assumption that she was the kind of woman who would cause trouble. She set her coffee cup down carefully. "I understand," she said, keeping her voice level. "I'm not looking to cause any problems. I just need honest work." Martha must have heard something in her tone because her expression softened. "I didn't mean offense. It's just something I have to make clear to any woman working here. We've had trouble before with hands getting distracted or fighting over female attention. Easier to set the rules clear from the start." Vincent had been quiet, but now he spoke up. "Priscilla's had a rough time of it, Martha. She's looking for a fresh start, not complications." "Fair enough." Martha stood and refilled their coffee cups. "Room and board plus $20 a month. You'll have a small room off the kitchen in the main house. Meals with me here in the cabin when it's just the regular crew, but you'll eat after the men during busy times. Sunday's your day off, but you'll still need to help with breakfast and supper. Does that sound acceptable?" $20 a month was more than fair, especially with housing and meals included. It was more than Priscilla had dared hope for. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Can you start Monday?" Martha asked. "I can start today if you need me." Martha smiled, the first real smile Priscilla had seen from her. "Monday's fine. Gives you time to settle your affairs in town. Vincent can bring you out Monday morning, or if you'd rather, Sam can fetch you in the wagon." "I can bring her," Vincent said quickly. "It's no trouble." After they finished their coffee, Vincent showed Priscilla around the ranch while Martha started preparing supper. He introduced her to some of the hands who were working near the barn, men with weather-beaten faces and cautious but polite nods. He showed her the bunkhouse, the barn where he worked with the horses, the smokehouse and root cellar, the chicken coop. "It's a good place," he said as they walked. "Mr. Reynolds is fair, and he doesn't tolerate any meanness or cruelty. Martha's a bit strict, but that's just her way. She'll warm up once she gets to know you." "She has every right to be cautious," Priscilla said. "She doesn't know me. None of us did yesterday, and look where we are now." They stopped at a corral where several horses grazed. Vincent leaned against the fence, his expression peaceful as he watched them. "Why are you doing all this?" Priscilla asked again. "And don't just say it's because you're a decent person. There has to be more to it." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "Had a sister once," he finally said. "Jenny. She was younger than me by 3 years. When my mother died, Jenny tried to hold things together, but my father, he fell apart, started drinking. Got mean. When I left for the war, I thought she'd be all right, thought the neighbors would look after her." He paused, his hands tightening on the fence rail. "When I came back, she was gone. Father said she ran off with some man, but I found out later what really happened. He'd gotten so bad, she'd had nowhere to go. The man she left with, he promised her safety. Instead, he took her to San Francisco and sold her to a brothel. By the time I tracked her down, she'd been dead for 6 months. Laudanum." Priscilla's breath caught. "Vincent, I'm so sorry. I spent a long time being angry. At my father, at the man who took her, at myself for not being there. Eventually, I realized anger wasn't bringing her back, but I made a promise to her memory. Anytime I could help someone who was in the kind of situation she was in, I would. No questions, no judgment, just help." He turned to look at Priscilla. "So that's why. You remind me a little of her. That look in your eyes, like you're expecting the world to kick you again. I couldn't help Jenny, but maybe I can help you." Something broke open inside Priscilla. She felt tears start to slide down her cheeks before she could stop them. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to believe that things could be different." "You don't have to believe it all at once," Vincent said gently. "Just take it one day at a time. Get through today, then tomorrow, then the day after that. Eventually, enough days will add up and you'll realize your life has changed." She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. "What if I disappoint you? What if I'm not good enough at the work?" "Then you learn and get better. Martha's tough, but she's a good teacher, and I'll be around if you need anything." He smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." They drove back to town as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Priscilla felt wrung out emotionally, but also lighter somehow. As if the conversation with Vincent had lanced some infected wound she had been carrying around. When they reached the boarding house, Vincent walked her to the door. "I'll be by Monday morning first light," he said. "Be ready to go." "I'll be ready." He started to leave, then turned back. "Priscilla, for what it's worth, I think you're going to be just fine." She watched him walk away, his tall figure disappearing into the gathering dusk, and allowed herself to believe him, just a little bit. The next day was Sunday, and Priscilla spent it preparing for her new position. She washed her old dress as best she could and hung it to dry. She inventoried her meager possessions, which fit easily into a small carpet bag May loaned her. She walked around Placerville, getting a feel for the town, noting the church, the school, the handful of shops and businesses that made up the commercial district. Several people nodded to her as she passed, and she realized that in the new dress Vincent had bought her, with her hair neatly braided, she looked like a respectable woman. It was a strange feeling, one she wasn't used to. That evening she sat on her bed and counted her remaining money. $3.40. It wasn't much, but it was more than she had 2 days ago, and in a month, if she kept the job, she would have $20 more. In 6 months she could have a real savings, maybe enough to buy a train ticket if she needed to leave, or maybe enough to stay. She thought about Vincent's words. Take it one day at a time. She could do that. She had survived worse with less. This time, at least, she had a chance. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Priscilla was dressed and waiting with her carpet bag when Vincent pulled up in front of the boarding house. He helped her up onto the wagon seat and they headed out of town. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "What if Martha doesn't like my cooking?" "Then she'll teach you how she wants it done. Don't worry so much." But Priscilla couldn't help worrying. So much depended on this working out. If she failed, she would be right back where she started with nothing and nowhere to go. Martha met them at the main house, a large white apron already tied around her waist. "Good, you're on time." Vincent put her bag in the room off the kitchen. "Priscilla, come with me." The kitchen was enormous compared to the cabin's small cooking area. There was a massive cast iron stove, long wooden counters, shelves full of dishes and cookware, and a pantry that was bigger than Priscilla's room at the boarding house. Doors led off to what Martha explained was a small bedroom for Priscilla and a storeroom. "We start breakfast at 5, Martha said briskly. "Coffee first, then biscuits, bacon, eggs, and gravy. Lunch is at noon, usually something simple like stew or beans with cornbread. Supper's at 6, and that's the big meal. Roast or steaks, potatoes, vegetables, pie if we have time. You clear?" "Yes, madam." "Good. Today we're just feeding the regular crew, so it'll be 8 men plus Mr. Reynolds and his son Thomas. On Mondays we do laundry, so after breakfast is cleaned up, we'll haul water and get to scrubbing. Questions?" Priscilla had 100 questions, but she just shook her head. Better to learn by doing. Martha set her to peeling potatoes while she herself started on a beef roast for supper. As they worked, Martha kept up a running commentary, explaining the routine, the preferences of the various men, the quirks of the stove. Priscilla listened and worked, her hands moving automatically through familiar tasks. When the men came in for lunch, Priscilla hung back, letting Martha serve while she observed. The men were rough-looking but polite, thanking Martha for the food and eating with the focused intensity of men who did hard physical labor. Mr. Reynolds was a stern-faced man in his 50s, and his son Thomas was perhaps 25, with his father's build but his mother's, supposedly, softer features. Vincent was among the men, and he caught Priscilla's eye and gave her an encouraging nod. It steadied her somehow, that small acknowledgement. After the men left, she and Martha cleaned up the lunch dishes and then hauled water for the laundry. It was back-breaking work, heating the water, scrubbing the clothes, rinsing them, wringing them out, and hanging them to dry. By the time they finished in late afternoon, Priscilla's arms ached and her hands were raw. But Martha looked at the lines of clean laundry flapping in the breeze and nodded with satisfaction. "You're a good worker," she said. "I can tell. Some women talk big but can't hold up to the labor. You'll do fine here." It was the first real praise Priscilla had received in longer than she could remember, and it warmed her more than the spring sunshine. That first week passed in a blur of early mornings and late nights. Priscilla threw herself into the work, determined to prove she could handle it. Her body ached from the unfamiliar labor, and she fell into bed each night too exhausted to think. But it was honest exhaustion, earned through legitimate work, and there was satisfaction in that. Martha slowly warmed to her, teaching her the rhythms of the ranch kitchen and sharing small details about her own life. She had come west with Sam 30 years ago, newly married and full of dreams. The ranch had been nothing but open range then, and they had helped build it into what it was now. Their daughter, born late in life, had been their joy until fever took her at age 12. Since then, it had been just the two of them. "I'm glad you're here," Martha said on Friday evening as they prepared supper. "It's nice to have another woman to talk to." Vincent came by the kitchen regularly, always finding some excuse. He needed to borrow a pot for coffee at the line shack. He wanted to know if Martha needed any supplies from town. He wondered if they had seen the barn cat and her new kittens. Priscilla noticed Martha giving them knowing looks, but the older woman said nothing. On Saturday, Vincent asked if Priscilla wanted to ride into town with him for supplies. She had Sunday off, he reasoned, so she could spend it in town if she wanted. Martha encouraged her to go, saying she could use some time away from the ranch. As they drove toward Placerville, Vincent was quieter than usual. Priscilla finally asked, "Something on your mind?" "Just thinking about how well you've done this week." Martha's impressed. "That's not easy to do." "The work's not so different from what I've done before, just more of it. It's not just the work, it's the way you fit in. The men respect you and Martha actually likes you. That's saying something." Priscilla felt her cheeks warm. "Everyone's been kind, kinder than I expected." "Are you still so sure you're not worth caring about?" She looked down at her hands, roughened and reddened from a week of hard labor. "I'm learning that maybe I was wrong about some things." "That's a start." He glanced over at her. "You planning to stay in town tonight?" "I thought I might. I need to return some things to May, and I wouldn't mind a proper bath in the bathhouse. I could meet you for breakfast tomorrow before we head back, if you wanted company." There was something hopeful in his voice, and Priscilla felt that unfamiliar emotion stirring again. Not hope exactly. Something warmer. Something that scared her more than hope did. "I'd like that," she said. They spent the day in town together, running errands but also just walking, talking, being in each other's company. Vincent showed her parts of Placerville she hadn't seen, including a small grove of cottonwood trees near the creek where people sometimes had picnics in summer. "It's peaceful here," Priscilla said, watching the water flow past. "I can see why you stayed." "It's not just the place," Vincent said. "It's the people. You find the right people and anywhere can feel like home." "Have you found the right people?" He looked at her with those whiskey-colored eyes. "I think I'm getting closer." They had dinner at the restaurant and Vincent walked her back to the boarding house. At the door, he paused. "I meant what I said that first night," he said, "about proving you wrong, about you not being worth loving. I'm still working on it." "You've already done more than you needed to," Priscilla said softly. "Haven't even gotten started yet." He tipped his hat. "See you tomorrow for breakfast." Priscilla watched him go, and when she went up to her room, she found herself unable to stop smiling. The weeks that followed developed a pleasant rhythm. Priscilla worked hard at the ranch, learning more from Martha each day. She discovered she had a knack for making pastries, and her pies became a favorite among the ranch hands. She learned to anticipate what was needed before Martha asked, and soon they worked together like a well-oiled machine. The men treated her with respect, careful to watch their language around her and always thanking her for the meals. Thomas Reynolds, the owner's son, was especially polite, sometimes lingering after meals to help carry dishes back to the kitchen. He was a shy young man, clearly lonely, and Priscilla was kind to him without encouraging any deeper interest. Vincent continued his regular visits to the kitchen, and gradually, imperceptibly, those visits became the highlights of Priscilla's days. He would lean against the counter while she worked, telling her stories about the horses he was training or the places he had been before coming to California. She found herself telling him things in return, small pieces of her past that didn't hurt quite so much in the telling. One evening in late April, as the sun was setting and the kitchen was finally clean, Vincent appeared at the back door with a small bundle. "Got something for you," he said. Priscilla wiped her hands on her apron. "What is it?" He unwrapped the bundle to reveal a book. It was used but in good condition, the cover showing a lady in a fine dress. "It's a novel. Lady at the general store said it's supposed to be real good. Thought you might like something to read on your days off." Priscilla took the book carefully, running her fingers over the cover. "I haven't had a book of my own since I was a girl." "Well, now you do." He shifted his weight, suddenly looking uncertain. "There's something else I wanted to ask you. The town's having a social next Saturday, dancing and such. I was wondering if you'd want to go with me." Her first instinct was to refuse. A social meant being around people, being judged, being found wanting. But when she looked at Vincent's hopeful expression, she found she didn't want to disappoint him. "I don't have anything suitable to wear to a dance." "Wear what you've got." "You always look just fine to me. I'm not much of a dancer, neither am I. We can be not much of dancers together." Despite herself, she smiled. "All right, I'll go." The happiness on his face made her breath catch. "Yeah, that's great. I'll pick you up Saturday afternoon and we can make a day of it." After he left, Priscilla sat in her small room with the book in her lap and tried to understand what was happening. Vincent Kane was courting her, actually courting her as if she were a proper lady deserving of courtship. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. Martha noticed the book the next morning and gave Priscilla a knowing smile. "Vincent gave you that," he did. "That boy's sweet on you, has been since he first brought you here. He's just being kind. Kindness is one thing. Bringing a woman books and asking her to dances is another." Martha pulled a pan of biscuits from the oven. "He's a good man, Priscilla, one of the best I've known. If he's showing interest, you could do a lot worse than returning it." "I'm not right for him," Priscilla said quietly. "He deserves someone better, someone without my history." Martha set down the pan and turned to face her. "Now you listen to me. Whatever happened to you before, it wasn't your fault. Men who take advantage of women in bad situations, they're the ones who should carry shame, not the women. Vincent sees you for who you are now, and that's a hardworking, honest woman who's trying her best. That's all anyone can ask. But what if I can't be what he needs? What if you can? You won't know unless you give it a chance." Martha squeezed her shoulder. "Don't let your past steal your future." The words stayed with Priscilla all week. She thought about them as she worked, as she read the book Vincent had given her, as she lay in bed at night. Maybe Martha was right. Maybe she had been so busy believing she didn't deserve good things that she had never given herself the chance to have them. Saturday arrived bright and warm, the first real hint of the summer to come. Priscilla dressed in her blue calico dress and braided her hair carefully, weaving in some ribbon Martha had given her. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who looked almost pretty, and the thought didn't seem as impossible as it once had. Vincent arrived in the afternoon, driving a small buggy instead of the usual ranch wagon. He had clearly made an effort too, wearing clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his hair combed back and his jaw freshly shaved. "You look beautiful," he said when he saw her, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe him. The social was held in a large barn on the edge of town, decorated with ribbons and lanterns. Tables were set up with food brought by various families, and a group of musicians was already playing in one corner. People milled about, talking and laughing, children running between the adults. Priscilla felt her anxiety rise as they entered. This was exactly the kind of situation where people would judge her, where someone might recognize her from her time in Sacramento or ask questions she didn't want to answer. But Vincent kept his hand at the small of her back, steady and reassuring. He introduced her to people simply as my friend Priscilla from the ranch, and no one asked for more details. Some of the other ranch hands were there with wives or sweethearts, and they greeted her warmly. When the dancing started, Vincent led her onto the floor for a simple waltz. He had been truthful about not being much of a dancer, but he was earnest and careful, and Priscilla found herself laughing as they stumbled through the steps together. "I told you I wasn't good at this," he said, grinning. "You're doing fine. Better than me, anyway." "Well, we're both terrible then. Perfect match." They danced several more times, getting slightly better with each song. Between dances, they ate cake and drank punch and talked with other people. A few men asked Priscilla to dance, and Vincent graciously stepped aside, though she noticed him watching to make sure she was comfortable. As the evening wore on, the crowd thinned as families with young children headed home. The music turned slower, more romantic. Vincent offered his hand again. One more dance. This time, the dance was different, slower, closer. Vincent's hand was warm against her back, and when she looked up, she found him already watching her. "I have to tell you something," he said quietly. "And I don't want you to feel pressured or obligated because of everything I've done for you. This is just the truth, and you can do with it what you want." Priscilla's heart hammered in her chest. "What is it?" "I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I have been since that first night in the rain. I know you've got reasons to be cautious, and I know you don't quite believe you deserve to be loved, but I wanted you to know that you are. Loved, I mean, by me." The music swirled around them, and Priscilla felt tears prick her eyes. "Vincent, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." He pulled her a little closer. "But if someday you think you might feel the same way, I'd like to know that too." She thought about the past month, about all the small kindnesses, the steady presence, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. She thought about how she felt when he smiled at her, when he brought her small gifts, when he went out of his way just to see her. It wasn't gratitude she felt. It was something deeper, something she had thought herself incapable of. "I think," she said slowly, "that I might already feel the same way. It scares me, but I think I do." Vincent stopped dancing, right there in the middle of the floor, and cupped her face in his hands. "You don't have to be scared. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep proving to you every single day that you're worth loving until you believe it in your bones." "You already have been proving it," she whispered. "Every single day." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Priscilla felt something inside her that had been broken for so long begin to heal. They stayed at the social until the musicians packed up and the lanterns were extinguished. Vincent drove her back to the ranch slowly, taking the long way, neither of them wanting the evening to end. They talked about everything and nothing, making plans for future outings, sharing dreams they had almost forgotten they had. When they finally reached the ranch, Vincent walked her to the kitchen door. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "On your day off, I'd like that. We could take a picnic out to that grove by the creek, just the two of us." "That sounds perfect." He kissed her again, lingering this time, and Priscilla felt warm all the way through. The next day, they did take that picnic. Martha packed them a basket of food and shooed them off with a smile. At the creek, they spread a blanket under the cottonwood trees and spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and sharing stolen kisses. Vincent told her more about his childhood in Texas, about his mother who had taught him to read using the family Bible, about his father who had been a good man before grief destroyed him. He talked about his time in the war, though he skipped over the worst parts, and about the years of drifting that followed. Priscilla found herself able to talk about her own past, without the usual shame choking her words. She told him about her childhood in Virginia City, about parents who had loved her but couldn't overcome their own demons. She told him about the men who had taken advantage of her desperation, about the feeling of being trapped with no way out. "But I'm not trapped anymore," she said, lying on the blanket and looking up through the leaves at the sky. "For the first time in years, I feel like I have choices, like my life could be something different." Vincent lay beside her, their hands intertwined. "It already is something different. You're making it different every day. Because of you. No, because of you. I just helped open a door. You're the one who walked through it." As spring turned to summer, their relationship deepened. They saw each other every day, whether it was Vincent stopping by the kitchen or Priscilla walking out to the corrals during her afternoon break. On Saturdays, they went into town together, and on Sundays, they spent as much time as they could in each other's company. The ranch hands noticed, of course, and there was some good-natured teasing. But it was clear to everyone that Vincent's intentions were serious. He was courting Priscilla properly, with respect and obvious affection. Mr. Reynolds called Priscilla into his office one day in June. She went nervously, worried that somehow she had done something wrong, but the ranch owner just smiled and gestured for her to sit. "I wanted to tell you that you've been doing excellent work," he said. "Martha speaks highly of you, and that's not easy to earn. I also wanted to say that Vincent Kane is one of my best men. Honest, hardworking, loyal. If he's courting you, he means it. And if things get serious between you two, well, there's a small house on the far side of the property that's sitting empty. Young married couples need their own space." Priscilla felt her face flush. "Sir, we haven't talked about marriage. Not yet, maybe, but you will. I've seen how that boy looks at you." Reynolds leaned back in his chair. "I just wanted you to know that if things head in that direction, you'll both have my blessing and my support. Good people are hard to find, and I'd like to keep both of you at the Double R." "Thank you, sir. That means a great deal." That evening, she told Vincent about the conversation. They were sitting on the porch of Martha and Sam's cabin watching the sun set. "He's not wrong," Vincent said. "About things getting serious, I mean. I know we've only been courting a few months, but I've known for a while now that you're the woman I want to spend my life with." Priscilla's heart raced. "Vincent, I'm not asking yet," he said quickly. "I want to do this right. I want you to be sure without any doubts, but I needed you to know that's where my heart is heading, toward a future with you." She took his hand. "My heart is heading in the same direction. I never thought I could have this. A good man, an honest life, a future that doesn't scare me. You've given me all of that. You've given yourself that. I just got to be part of it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to deep blue. Priscilla thought about how much her life had changed in just a few short months. From that desperate woman in the rain to someone with hope, with love, with possibilities stretching out before her. In July, the ranch got busy with preparations for the cattle drive. A large herd needed to be moved to the railhead in Sacramento, a journey that would take 2 weeks. Most of the hands would go, including Vincent. The night before the drive, Vincent took Priscilla for a walk under the stars. When they reached the creek, he turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I'll be gone for nearly a month, counting the travel time there and back. That's going to be hard for me, being away from you that long. It'll be hard for me too. When I get back, there's something I want to ask you, something important." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet bag. "But I wanted to give you this now, so you'd have something while I'm gone." Inside the bag was a delicate silver locket on a chain. When Priscilla opened it, she found a tiny photograph of Vincent inside, clearly taken years ago but unmistakably him. "It was my mother's," Vincent said. "One of the few things I kept when I left Texas. I had a photographer in town put my picture in it. That way, even when I'm away, I'm close to your heart." Tears slipped down Priscilla's cheeks. "Vincent, I can't take your mother's locket." "Yes, you can. She would have liked you. Would have been happy I found someone like you." He fastened it around her neck. "I love you, Priscilla. I'll come back to you, I promise." "I love you too," she whispered, and kissed him like she was trying to memorize the feel of him. The men left at dawn the next day. Priscilla stood with Martha and watched them ride out, Vincent turning in his saddle to wave one last time before he disappeared over the hill. The month that followed was long and lonely. Priscilla threw herself into work, helping Martha with the extra chores that came with most of the hands being gone. She wore the locket every day, touching it whenever she felt anxious or missed Vincent too much. Martha was good company, and they grew even closer during that time. The older woman shared more stories about her life, about the daughter she still missed, about the strange paths life could take. She also taught Priscilla more complex cooking, including her secret recipe for apple pie that the ranch hands loved. "You'll need to know this," Martha said as they worked, "when you have your own household to run." Priscilla blushed but didn't deny the implication. She had spent many nights thinking about Vincent's hints about their future, about what he might ask when he returned. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. 3 weeks after the men left, a rider came to the ranch with news. There had been trouble on the drive. Details were scarce, but someone had been injured. The rider didn't know who. Priscilla felt the blood drain from her face. Martha put a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Don't assume the worst," she said. "Vincent's smart and careful. He'll be fine." But the waiting was agony. Every day that passed without word was torture. Priscilla found she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep properly, couldn't focus on anything but her fear that something had happened to the man she loved. 4 days after the rider's arrival, the men finally came home. Priscilla ran out of the kitchen when she heard the horses, scanning the group desperately. She spotted Sam, spotted Thomas Reynolds, spotted several of the regular hands, and then she saw Vincent, riding near the back of the group. He had a bandage around his head and moved stiffly, but he was alive. He was home. She ran to him without thinking about propriety or what anyone might think. Vincent dismounted carefully, and she threw her arms around him, feeling him wince but hold her tight anyway. "You're hurt," she said, pulling back to look at him properly. "Just a little. Got kicked by a spooked horse, knocked me out for a bit and cracked a rib, but nothing serious." He touched her face. "I promised I'd come back to you." That evening, after supper was served and cleaned up, Vincent asked Priscilla to walk with him. They went to their spot by the creek, the place that had become special to them. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold. "I thought about you every single day I was gone," Vincent said. "Even when I got hurt, all I could think about was getting back to you, about the question I wanted to ask." He got down on one knee and Priscilla felt her breath stop. "Priscilla Zimmerman, I know you came to this town thinking you weren't worth loving, but I've spent every day since I met you proving that wrong. You are worth loving. You're worth everything. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that if you'll let me. Will you marry me?" The tears came freely now, tears of joy and relief and overwhelming love. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Vincent stood and kissed her, and Priscilla felt like she was finally, truly home. They were married 6 weeks later on a beautiful September day. The ceremony took place at the small church in Placerville, with Martha and Sam standing up for them and most of the ranch hands in attendance. Priscilla wore a simple white dress that Martha had helped her make, and Vincent wore a new suit purchased especially for the occasion. As they exchanged vows, Priscilla thought about that night in the rain, about how close she had come to giving up entirely. And then she looked at Vincent, at the man who had refused to let her believe she was worthless, and felt gratitude so deep it was almost overwhelming. After the ceremony, there was a celebration at the ranch. Mr. Reynolds had given them the day off and contributed to the wedding supper. There was music and dancing and more food than seemed possible. As the evening wore on and the stars came out, Vincent led Priscilla away from the party. "Ready to see our home?" he asked. Mr. Reynolds had been true to his word. The small house on the far side of the property had been cleaned and furnished, ready for them to start their married life. It had 2 rooms downstairs, a kitchen and living area, and a bedroom upstairs under the eaves. It was small but cozy, and it was theirs. Vincent carried her over the threshold, and they stood together in the middle of their new home, holding each other close. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Priscilla said honestly. Their first year of marriage was full of adjustments and discoveries. Priscilla learned to manage her own household while still helping Martha with the ranch kitchen during busy times. Vincent continued his work with the horses, though he made sure to come home for lunch every day and never stayed late unless absolutely necessary. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, the small compromises and accommodations that make a marriage work. Vincent was patient with Priscilla's occasional dark moods, the times when her past would creep up and whisper lies about her worthlessness. He would hold her and remind her of all the ways she was valuable, not just to him but in herself. Priscilla learned to accept love without waiting for the other shoe to drop. She learned to trust that Vincent's affection was genuine and lasting, not something that would disappear the moment she made a mistake. It wasn't always easy, but every day with him made it a little easier. In the spring, Priscilla realized she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had never imagined herself as a mother, had never thought she would have the chance. When she told Vincent, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure happiness. "We're going to have a baby," he said wonderingly. "You're going to be a mother." "I don't know how to be a mother," Priscilla said, fear creeping in. "What if I'm not good at it? You'll learn. We'll figure it out together." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "This baby is lucky to have you." Martha was thrilled by the news and immediately took it upon herself to teach Priscilla everything about pregnancy and childbirth and infant care. The older woman had lost her own daughter, but she poured all that maternal love into preparing Priscilla for motherhood. The pregnancy was relatively easy, and Priscilla continued working until she got too large to move comfortably around the kitchen. Vincent fussed over her constantly, which she found alternately endearing and annoying. He built a cradle for the baby and made sure their house had everything they would need. On a cold November night in 1875, Priscilla went into labor. Martha was there, and the doctor from town, and Vincent, who refused to leave despite Martha's insistence that childbirth was no place for men. The labor was long and difficult, but when their son finally arrived, red-faced and howling, Priscilla felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. "He's perfect," Vincent said, tears streaming down his face as he held his son for the first time. "Priscilla, he's perfect." They named him James after Vincent's grandfather. He was a healthy baby with a good appetite and his father's dark hair. Priscilla was exhausted but overwhelmed with joy. In the days that followed, as she learned to feed and care for this tiny person who depended entirely on her, Priscilla marveled at how far she had come. From that broken woman in the rain to this. A wife, a mother, a woman with a home and a family and a future. Vincent proved to be a devoted father. He would come home during the day to check on Priscilla and the baby, and in the evenings, he would walk James around the house, singing soft lullabies until the baby fell asleep. Watching him with their son, Priscilla fell even more deeply in love with her husband. The years that followed were busy and full. James grew into a lively toddler, constantly getting into things and requiring close supervision. Priscilla continued to help Martha with the ranch kitchen when she could, and Vincent took on more responsibility with the ranch's horse breeding program. When James was 2, Priscilla became pregnant again. This time, a daughter arrived, whom they named Ellen after Vincent's mother. She was a quieter baby than her brother, with Priscilla's green eyes and a sweet temperament. 2 babies, Vincent said one night, sitting on their porch with Ellen in his arms while James played at their feet. "We're outnumbered now." "Are you complaining?" Priscilla asked. "Not even a little bit. This is everything I ever wanted." He looked at her with such love that it still made her heart skip. "You've given me everything." "You gave me everything first," she said softly. "You gave me a reason to believe I could be more than what my past said I was. You always were more. I just helped you see it." Life settled into a comfortable pattern. The children grew and the ranch prospered. Vincent eventually became the foreman when Sam retired, and Mr. Reynolds began talking about Vincent buying into the ranch as a partner. Their little house felt too small with 2 active children, so they added on, building 2 more bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. Priscilla had become friends with several women in town and no longer felt the need to hide or apologize for her existence. She had proven through years of steady, respectable living that she was worthy of being included in the community. She helped with church socials, traded preserves and baked goods with neighbors, and was known as a kind, hard-working woman. Sometimes she would think back to that night in March of 1874, standing in the rain with nothing and no hope. It seemed like a different lifetime now, like it had happened to someone else. In a way, it had. That broken woman had been transformed, day by love and kindness and her own determination, into someone new. One evening, when James was 8 and Ellen was 6, the family sat around their dinner table. James was talking excitedly about a horse he wanted to learn to ride, and Ellen was showing them a drawing she had made at school. Vincent caught Priscilla's eye and smiled, that same warm smile he had given her so many years ago. After the children were in bed, they sat together on their porch, watching the stars come out. "You remember the night we met?" Vincent asked. "Every detail. You asked if I was all right, and I said I was fine. You were the furthest thing from fine." "I was," she agreed. "I was convinced I wasn't worth saving, that I didn't deserve any kind of happiness. And now," Priscilla looked out at the land they called home, thought about the children sleeping upstairs, about the man beside her who had loved her even when she couldn't love herself. "Now I know I was wrong. Not because of anything I did, but because you wouldn't let me keep believing those lies. You proved me wrong every single day." "You proved yourself wrong," Vincent said. "I just reminded you who you really were when you forgot." "I never forget anymore." "How could I when I have all this to remind me?" She leaned against him. "I love you. I don't think I say that enough. You say it every day in 100 different ways, but I never get tired of hearing it." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you too, always have, always will." The years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to their life together. James grew tall and strong, following in his father's footsteps with horses. Ellen proved to have her mother's gift for cooking and her grandmother Martha's organizational skills. When a third child came along, another son they named Thomas after Mr. Reynolds, The family felt complete. Martha and Sam grew older, eventually retiring fully and moving into a smaller house in town. Before they left, Martha pulled Priscilla aside. "I want you to know how proud I am of you," the older woman said. "When Vincent first brought you here, I saw a girl who had been beaten down by life. Now I see a strong woman, a wonderful mother, someone who's made a real place for herself in this world. You did that." "I couldn't have done it without you," Priscilla said, hugging her. "You were like a mother to me when I needed one. And you were like a daughter to me, a second chance at having that relationship." Martha wiped her eyes. "You take care of that family of yours. And remember, no matter what life throws at you, you're strong enough to handle it." Priscilla took over Martha's role managing the ranch kitchen, with Ellen helping as she got older. She trained other women who came to work at the ranch, always remembering her own uncertain beginning and making sure to offer kindness and patience. Vincent did become a partner in the ranch, buying in when Mr. Reynolds decided to semi-retire. It was a risk, taking on the debt, but it paid off. The Double R continued to prosper, and Vincent's reputation as an honest, fair rancher spread throughout the region. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Priscilla back to Placerville, to the spot outside the old saloon where they had first met. The building was different now, converted into a dry goods store, but the memory remained. "Can you believe it's been 10 years?" he asked. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Sometimes it feels like yesterday." She looked up at him. "Do you ever regret it, taking a chance on someone like me?" "Not for a single second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." He took her hand. "You know, I think about that night a lot, about how close you were to just disappearing into the darkness, about how easily I could have walked past you without stopping. It scares me sometimes how close we came to never finding each other. But you did stop, that's what matters. I stopped because something told me I needed to, and I'm grateful for that voice every single day." He pulled her close. "Here's to the next 10 years and the 10 after that. And all the years we have together." They renewed their vows that day, standing in the little church with their 3 children watching. It wasn't a big ceremony, just family and close friends, but it felt important. A recommitment to the life they had built together, to the love that had transformed them both. As time went on, Priscilla became known throughout Placerville and the surrounding area as someone to turn to when you needed help. Women in difficult situations would seek her out, knowing she would understand, knowing she wouldn't judge. She gave them advice, sometimes employment at the ranch, always hope. She remembered what it was like to believe you weren't worth saving, and she made sure no one else had to believe that lie. Vincent supported her completely in this work. Sometimes he would come across someone who needed help, and he would bring them to Priscilla, just as he had once brought her to Martha. They built a reputation as people who cared, who looked out for those on the margins. James eventually married a sweet girl from town, and they built a house on ranch property, starting the next generation of Kanes at the Double R. Ellen showed no interest in marrying young, preferring to focus on learning the business side of the ranch. Thomas was still young but showed promise with animals, spending all his free time in the barns. On a summer evening, when Priscilla was 40 years old, she sat on her porch watching the sun set. Vincent was beside her, his hair now threaded with gray, his face more weathered but his eyes still the same warm, whiskey color. James and his wife were over for dinner, and she could hear their laughter through the open windows where Ellen was entertaining them with some story. "What are you thinking about?" Vincent asked. "Just how grateful I am for all of this. For you, for our children, for this life we've built. Sometimes I still can't quite believe it's real. It's real. We're real." He took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her wedding ring. And you deserve every bit of it. I know, she said and meant it. It had taken years, but she finally believed it in her bones, just as Vincent had said she would. I'm not that woman in the rain anymore. No, you're not. But she's still part of you, part of your story, and that's all right. She survived long enough to become you. Priscilla thought about that, about the journey from desperation to contentment, from believing she was worthless to knowing she was loved. It hadn't been easy and it hadn't been quick, but it had been worth every step. You really did prove me wrong, she said. Every single day, just like you promised. And I'll keep doing it for the rest of our lives. Vincent kissed her hand. That's what love does. It keeps showing up, keeps proving itself, keeps reminding you of the truth when the lies get loud. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Priscilla leaned against her husband and thought about how one act of kindness, one person who refused to walk past someone in need, could change everything. Vincent had given her a chance when she needed it most, but more than that, he had given her the steady, daily proof that she was worthy of love and happiness, and she had taken that gift and built a life with it. A good life, full of love and purpose and meaning. She had raised children who were kind and strong. She had helped other women find their own second chances. She had become someone her younger self wouldn't have believed possible. The years continued to flow like the creek near their house, steady and sure. There were challenges, of course, difficult seasons and hard losses. Sam passed away when Priscilla was 45, and Martha followed him a year later, breaking Priscilla's heart. There were droughts that tested the ranch and market downturns that strained their finances. James's wife had a difficult pregnancy that nearly killed her, but ultimately gave them a healthy grandson. Through it all, Vincent was there, steady as ever. He had gray in his beard now and moved a little slower, but his love never wavered. Every morning, he would kiss Priscilla goodbye before heading to work. Every evening, he would come home to her, no matter how tired. Every day, in countless small ways, he continued to prove that she was worth loving. And Priscilla did the same for him, because she had learned that love wasn't just about receiving. It was about giving, about showing up, about being present for someone else's struggles and joys. She had learned that from Vincent, and she spent the rest of her life living that lesson. When they celebrated their 25th anniversary, the whole town turned out. The ranch threw a huge party, with food and music and dancing. Their children, now grown with families of their own, gave speeches about what their parents' marriage had taught them. Friends shared stories about the couple's kindness and generosity over the years. At the end of the night, when everyone else had gone home, Vincent and Priscilla walked down to their spot by the creek. The moon was full, reflecting on the water, and the night was warm. 25 years, Vincent said. Half a lifetime. The better half, Priscilla replied. Everything before you seems like a dream now. A bad dream, but still not quite real. This is what's real. I was thinking the other day about that first week when I would come up with excuses to visit the kitchen. Do you remember? Priscilla laughed. You weren't very subtle. Martha teased me about it constantly. I couldn't help it. I wanted to be near you. Wanted to make sure you were settling in all right. Wanted to. He paused. I wanted to prove to you that not all men were like the ones who had hurt you, that someone could care about you without expecting anything in return. You did prove that. You proved so much. She turned to face him, taking both his hands. You saved my life, Vincent, not just that night in the rain, but every day since. You saved me from myself, from the lies I believed, from a life without hope or love. You saved yourself, he insisted. You were strong enough to take the chances I offered, brave enough to believe things could be different, determined enough to build a new life. All I did was show you the door. You walked through it. We can both be right, she said, smiling. We saved each other. He pulled her into his arms, and they swayed gently to music only they could hear. This was what love looked like, Priscilla thought. Not the passionate whirlwind of new romance, though they had had that too, but this steady, comfortable, deep affection. This knowing someone completely and loving them anyway. This choosing each other every day for 25 years. "Here's to the next 25, Vincent whispered. "And all the days after that," Priscilla added. As they stood by the creek under the moonlight, Priscilla felt the same sense of peace she had felt on her wedding day. She was exactly where she belonged, with exactly who she belonged with. The frightened woman in the rain was gone, transformed by love into someone who knew her own worth. The years that followed brought new grandchildren, new challenges, new joys. Vincent and Priscilla grew older together, their hair going white, their bodies slowing down, but their love never aging. They stayed active in the ranch and the community, always ready to help someone in need, always proof that redemption was possible. Ellen eventually married a banker from Sacramento and moved to the city, though she visited often. Thomas took over more of the ranch operations as Vincent gradually reduced his responsibilities. James's children grew tall and strong, the next generation of the Kane family legacy. When Vincent was 60 and Priscilla 56, they finally stepped back fully from running the ranch, turning operations over to Thomas and James. They kept their house, kept their routines, but had more time to simply be together. One evening, sitting on their porch watching yet another sunset, Priscilla said, "I've been thinking about writing down my story, our story, for the grandchildren so they know where they came from." "That's a good idea," Vincent said, "though I'm not sure they'll believe it." "Why not?" "Because it sounds like a fairy tale. Broken woman meets kind cowboy, he proves her wrong about herself, they live happily ever after. It's too perfect." "It wasn't perfect. We had hard times, we struggled. But we made it through, together. That's the part that sounds like a fairy tale." He smiled at her. "Though I suppose the best part is that it's all true." Priscilla did write down their story, filling page after page with memories of those early days, of Vincent's patient kindness, of her slow healing, of the life they had built. She wrote about the dark times, too, the moments when she had doubted herself, when old fears had surfaced. But mostly, she wrote about love, about how one person's refusal to let her give up had changed everything. When she finished, she showed it to Vincent. He read it slowly, tears sliding down his weathered cheeks. "This is beautiful," he said. "You've always had a way with words, but this is special." "It's our truth," Priscilla said simply. "I wanted to make sure it was remembered, that someone knows what you did for me." "What we did for each other," he corrected. She kept the pages in a wooden box Vincent made for her, adding to them occasionally as new memories formed. It became a family treasure, passed down eventually to their children and grandchildren, proof that love could heal even the deepest wounds. On their 30th anniversary, they went back to Placerville one more time. The town had changed significantly from the rough mining settlement it had been when they first met. It was more civilized now, with proper schools and churches and businesses. But some things remained the same. They stood outside the building that had once been a saloon, where Vincent had found Priscilla in the rain so many years ago. It was now a respectable dress shop, run by a widow and her daughter. "I died here," Priscilla said softly. "The old me, the one who thought she was worthless. She died right here in the rain. And someone new was born," Vincent added, "someone who learned she was worth fighting for. Someone who learned to fight for herself." She looked up at him. "Thank you for not walking past me that night. Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. I saw the truth. You just needed help remembering what it was." He pulled her close. "I love you, Priscilla Kane. I have loved you from the beginning and I will love you to the end. And I love you, Vincent Kane, my hero, my partner, my home. They stayed in Placerville that night at the boarding house that May's family still ran, though May herself had passed on and her daughter now managed it. In the morning, they had breakfast at the restaurant where Vincent had first fed her, and Priscilla remembered the hollow desperation of that night, the gnawing hunger that had been about more than just food. I was starving for more than a meal, she said. I was starving for hope, for kindness, for any reason to keep going. You fed me all of those things. And you took them and grew strong. That was all you, Priscilla. Your strength, your determination, your courage to try again even when everything told you not to. As they drove back to the ranch, Priscilla felt a sense of completion. She had come full circle, from desperation to joy, from worthlessness to worth. And Vincent had been there every step of the way, proving her wrong about herself with every sunrise, every small kindness, every declaration of love. The final years of their story were peaceful ones. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated the birth of great-grandchildren, and maintained the quiet routines that had sustained them for decades. Every morning, Vincent would bring Priscilla coffee in bed. Every evening, they would sit on their porch and watch the sunset. Every night, they would fall asleep in each other's arms, grateful for one more day together. Vincent passed away peacefully in his sleep at 71, his hand still holding Priscilla's. She grieved deeply, but she also knew gratitude for the 46 years they had shared, for the life he had given her, for the love that had transformed her. At his funeral, she stood before the gathered crowd and told their story. She told them about the cowboy who had seen a broken woman in the rain and refused to walk past. She told them about his daily acts of love, his patient kindness, his unwavering belief in her worth. She told them that he had proved her wrong about herself every single day, and that gift had changed not just her life, but the lives of everyone she had helped since. Vincent Kane was a good man, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. He saved my life, not through one grand gesture but through countless small ones. Through showing up, through keeping his promises, through loving me even when I couldn't love myself. And he taught me that everyone deserves that kind of love, that kind of second chance. That's his real legacy, not just in me, but in every person I've been able to help because he first helped me. Priscilla lived for another 7 years after Vincent's death. She stayed in their house, surrounded by memories and family. She continued to help women in difficult situations, always remembering that desperate night in the rain. She spent time with her children and grandchildren, making sure they knew the story of how their family began. On a warm spring evening, with her children gathered around her bed and the sun setting outside her window, Priscilla took her last breath. Her final words were "thank you," though she couldn't have said if she was thanking Vincent, or God, or the universe itself for the gift of the life she had been given. They buried her next to Vincent, under the cottonwood trees by the creek where they had shared so many peaceful moments. The headstone read, "Priscilla Kane, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She learned her worth and taught it to others." Their story became part of the family lore, passed down through generations. The wooden box with Priscilla's written account became a treasured heirloom. Their great-great-grandchildren would read about the cowboy and the woman in the rain, about daily acts of love that proved someone's worth, about second chances and redemption, and the transformative power of refusing to give up on someone. And somewhere in those pages, in that story of two people who saved each other, lived the truth that Priscilla had learned and Vincent had taught, that everyone is worth loving, even when they can't see it themselves. That sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to believe the lies, who shows up every day to prove the truth, who loves steadily and surely until that love breaks through all the walls. The rain that had fallen that March night in 1874 had long since soaked into the earth, nourishing the soil, helping things grow. Just like Vincent's kindness had soaked into Priscilla's wounded soul, nourishing it, helping her grow into someone who could love and be loved in return. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real, it was true, and it was proof that no one is beyond hope. No one is beyond saving, and everyone, absolutely everyone, is worth loving. The Double R Ranch continued on, run by the Kane descendants, each generation knowing the story of their family's beginning. They knew about the woman who had believed herself worthless, and the cowboy who had proved her wrong every single day until she believed it too. They knew about love that showed up consistently, that didn't give up, that saw potential where others saw only failure. And in Placerville, California, though the town had changed and modernized, though few remained who remembered Vincent and Priscilla Kane, their legacy lived on. In the women who got second chances, in the kindness shown to strangers, in the understanding that everyone has a story and everyone deserves help. The end of their story was also a beginning, ripples spreading outward from that one night in the rain, touching lives they would never know about, creating change they would never see. Because that's what love does. It doesn't just transform the people directly involved. It spreads, it grows, it teaches others what's possible. Vincent had proved Priscilla wrong about herself every single day, and in doing so had proved something even more important. That love, real love, the kind that shows up and keeps showing up, can heal anything, can transform anyone, can turn despair into hope, worthlessness into worth, and a rainy night's desperation into a lifetime of joy. And that truth, more than anything else, was what made their story worth remembering, worth telling, worth believing in. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Not because it was easy, but because it endured. Not because they were extraordinary people, but because they proved that ordinary people doing extraordinary things for each other can change the world, one life at a time. The woman who had stood in the rain believing she wasn't worth loving had been wrong. Vincent Kane had proved it. And together, they had built a life that stood as permanent testimony to the power of believing in someone, especially when they've forgotten how to believe in themselves.